What is it like to be a debut author today? And what is it like to write about your homeland when your country is at war? We'll talk about this and a lot more on today's episode with Anna Voloshyna and her new book, Budmo, Recipes from a Ukrainian Kitchen. Welcome to Everything Cookbooks, the podcast for writers, readers, and cooks. I'm Kate Leahy, and joining me today is Kristin Donnelly. Hey, Kristin.
Hey, Kate.
So when I say Ukrainian food, what comes to your mind?
Pickles. It's funny. I guess sometimes we think of Ukrainian food or food from the former USSR as being like maybe stodgy and a lot of potatoes. But I've also seen so much more variety over the past few years and these bright, tangy flavors. I guess I now think first of pickles.
Pickles, I know, and all those, and it's not just vinegar pickles, it's fermented pickles, it's all those fermented foods. It's kind of like this has been part of the culture there to ferment, to make sauerkrauts, to make, lacto-fermented dill pickles, and it's just always been on the table as part of the meal. And now it's trendy, right?
Right. It's like what is old is new.
Exactly. And what's so great too is because we're seeing a lot more, new stories coming out, like the food of Georgia has become sort of what people think of when they think, oh, those vibrant flavors from Eastern Europe or the Caucasus. But now with our interview today, we're really going to get into some of what makes Ukrainian food special. And part of that, the excitement about this is that this new book that we're going to talk about is just so beautiful. Like you look at these pictures and you think, I want to make that. Yeah. Wow, there's so much color, there's so much variety. There's so many different ways to make borscht, apparently, which I didn't realize.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at least three cool. in this book, but yeah,
at least three. Yeah. So with no further ado, I will introduce our guest today. Anna Voloshyna was born and raised in Ukraine before moving to the San Francisco Bay Area in 2011. In San Francisco, while homesick for Ukrainian food, she began hosting pop-up dinners focused around Georgian and Ukrainian specialties, all those foods we were just kind of talking about, all in an effort to share her food with more people. She also started working as a food photographer and a stylist and partnering with chefs and food brands and building up her social media presence, which we will have in the show notes so you can check it out there. Today, we're going to talk about how she wrote her first book, and we're also going to check in to see how the war in Ukraine has affected her. Anna, thanks so much for coming on to Everything Cookbooks today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Congratulations on your debut book. It's really beautiful. And while you were writing this beautiful book called Budmo, I mean, you were writing this all before the war in Ukraine broke out. And, since then, you've become a vocal, activist, raising awareness for the war. So before we get into talking about the book, we just wanted to know a little bit more about how the war has changed your life and how it's changed what you want to contribute to understanding of Ukrainian food and culture.
Oh, my God. The war changed everything. First of all, I understood what's important in this life. And the family and traditions and my country is the most important thing ever. Now I want to let people know that Ukraine is fighting for its survival. And before the war, I thought, oh my God, I will promote the tourism and I will make people want to go to Ukraine and try this amazing food. And right now I feel like it's changed. And now I want to show guys, come over to Ukraine and support us, cook our food, spread our culture. And this is what we are fighting for. And this is our culture we want to preserve. And if Ukraine will lose this war, we will lose everything. There will be no Ukraine, no Ukrainian culture, no Ukrainian food, because they will erase everything. And I wanted to send this message and be very clear that this is not the war we can lose. This is not only about Ukraine, this is about the whole Europe. And in my memory, I don't remember anything like that in Europe ever. We had like pretty brutal conflicts, but this is like whole other level. And it was so tragic to learn about that in the first place. I had to go through month and month of self-reflection and like a lot of self-reflection and everything. But yeah, I'm happy I can be the voice and people can hear it and listen to it.
How is your family right now?
So my family is okay. They're all in one city. I feel that we're so lucky because everybody is in Odessa, and this is one of my favorite cities in Ukraine. And they're still the closest they can be to their homes. But unfortunately, our hometown is under Russian occupation. So my family cannot go back. They escaped barely. Right now, half of the city is ruined. As far as I know, our houses are still standing, but we don't know what will happen next. So the city is without electricity, water, or food supply at this point. We're all heartbroken, but at the same time, we understand that we are the lucky people who could escape, and my family didn't want to leave. I practically had to scream at them every single day to let them know that this is not safe, guys, you cannot stay there. And now they're all safe. This is, at this point, this is the best news. If your family is safe, this is like all you can hope for.
Yeah, I'm so glad.
Right. And you had that beautiful essay in the Washington Post earlier this year talking about it. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. But
Thank you.
It's a pretty incredible situation that you find yourself in that I don't think any cookbook author I know has ever felt in this particular moment, because I'm very glad actually that you wrote this book before any of this happened, because I'm glad this book happened. And I bet it would have been really hard to write these joyous stories that are in your book when you're going through this scary moment. So I'm actually really grateful that you put the time in when you did. So we have this book now, and it's kind of, it's almost like, sometimes books can be like time capsules, and this can be like a time capsule in Ukraine before the war. So hopefully it also preserves it for after the war as well.
That's how I feel about it.
It's very joyful too. It's a very joyful book. So to have something that's like, with everything going on in Ukraine feeling so heavy, it's so nice to have this joyful example to show the culture and the food.
So I wanted to say that even during the war, our people are in a very good spirit. We're still joking. We're still having fun and like find joy in like everyday life, no matter what, because everything else that's happening around is so horrible and so dark that we cannot lose our spirit. And the Budmo, actually, this is one of my favorite words in Ukrainian, because this encapsulates the spirit of Ukraine. We always say, instead of cheers in Ukraine, we say Budmo, and that means let us be. It has a very broad meaning of let us be together, let us enjoy this moment, let us be healthy. And this is such a joyous word, and I hear it always during our celebrations. And I wanted to call the book something meaningful. And I'm so grateful that my publisher allowed me to keep the name, because it's kind of weird. Nobody knows it, and I need to explain it. But I feel like this is good. I love to explain that.
It's a great word to explain.
It's so fun to say.
Yeah,
I think it's like such a great word for all of us to be introduced to.
Absolutely. And, it's a short word, which is also nice for cookbook titles. So I think it's great. I really think it fits. So just to rewind a little bit, you're talking to us from San Francisco, where you live. What brought you to San Francisco? Was it work? Was it school? I mean, because you were born and raised in Ukraine. Your husband.
Yes. I got married early, and I always knew that I wanted to see the world, and I will travel a lot. And I always I love Ukraine. I love going there, but I had it in my heart that I will live in somewhere else. And my husband, he is in tech, of course, and he's created a startup, got acquired, and the company that acquired his startup brought us here. And I instantly fell in love with this place, and I think we're very lucky to be here. I thought that I will live somewhere in Europe and will just go back and forth between Europe and Ukraine. I would never imagine that I will end up in the United States, because it was so far away and it was such a different country, like a dreamland. And then I came here and I'm like, oh my God, this is a lovely place. I want to be here.
But I think you were also probably facing a lot of Americans who are just like, Ukraine, where is that? Because I think we had such an, I'm older than you. I grew up in like that whole, Cold War era where, you had the Soviet Union and it was this huge block of countries. And it was like, who knows what all the individual countries do. But what I love about what your book does is the introduction. It has this really great history of Ukraine. So if somebody really just wants to get familiar with the background, I mean, it's a really helpful history part of just kind of like, all right, this is this country. This is the layers of history that have happened in this part of the world. And because you know how it is, like San Francisco, we think things are old that came from the gold rush. So.
Oh my God. So that introduction was the hardest thing about the whole book, writing that. Just because, oh my God, you cannot even imagine how hard it was to growing up in Ukraine, learning history and finding out different dates. The history was so mixed up because of the USSR and their own narrative. They tried to erase parts of the history, kind of what Russia is doing right now in Russia. They rewriting, they just like push their own stories. And we grew up not knowing what the real date of the Second World War was. It was 1941, just because USSR didn't want anyone to know that they were in alliance with Hitler. So they just like kind of pushed it under the rug. So it was so weird. It was a lot of details like that. So I had to take a lot of time to do research and to distinguish what memories I have, and they were not true because of the twisted history they tried to push.
Wow. How did you do your research?
I took a course of lectures from some university in actually Wondrium, which is amazing. I watched a ton of lecture there. I read some books. I did my own research. I contacted Ukrainian researchers, and that helped a lot because I cried once during this whole process, and that was when I wrote this intro because I was crying like, I don't know my own history. This is so bad.
You know what? A lot of us are going through that in the United States. It's a different level and reason, but it's fine to have to relearn our history.
That's true. But that's actually a really good thing to talk about, because for people out there who are writing cookbooks that do have a history component, it really does pay to do your own research. Don't look at the first thing you see. You have to look at multiple sources. You have to look at multiple dates to see if they line up. And if one date is always consistent, that's probably the right date, but, double check. So that's really good advice for anybody.
Yeah. Yes. And my copy editor was so amazing. She knows so much, and she's like, okay, this is it. Okay, double check that. And I'm like, thank you.
That's awesome.
You're like helping me so much.
Yeah.
Writing a cookbook is a lonely process, but actually it's not that lonely because you're reaching out to different people to confirm the information, to ask for advice. And I think this is a crucial step in this process.
Absolutely. Well, let me go back a little bit and to figure out when you decided you really wanted to write a cookbook. What was that inspiration? Have you always wanted to write a cookbook, or was it something that started when you moved to San Francisco?
Definitely when I moved to San Francisco. It was not, because I didn't know I will be in a food industry at all. I couldn't even imagine that. Because in Ukraine, when I was there at like 18, 20, nobody wanted their kid to be a chef or a cook because it was no celebrity chefs. There was nothing like here. Very few cooking shows. Right now, it's like we have Master Chef, we have Iron Chef, we have everything. So it's a real deal. But when I was there, it was nothing like that. Nobody considered it as a career. And everybody thought, okay, you need to be either a lawyer or like go into economics or do some like very steady, high paid thing. And then I came here, I started cooking, and cooking was my bridge towards this culture and towards other people because I had no one here. And cooking is one of, like, I think it's my second language for sure, because this is like something I know and I communicate with people through food. And when I'm sad, I cook. When I'm happy, I cook. It was easy to make friends by like inviting some even strangers or my husband's coworkers here to our house and just cook for them, and seeing them eating, enjoying, and asking questions like sparked this joy in me. And I thought, oh my God, that would be so cool if I could have my own cookbook and spread the joy further. Yeah, I decided, like, why not?
Wow. And you took we actually are having Tori Ritchie on the podcast, and was she your teacher at Stanford? Tell me a little bit about how you learned how to do a cookbook.
Okay, Tori is my number one person in the world. Okay, maybe my mom and Tori. They will be
yeah, I don't want to get in. I don't want Tori and your mom to get in a fight or anything.
They're good friends now, so they met.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes, my mom cooked for Tori, and they're very good friends now. And honestly, I think Tori is my creative mom. She was so helpful, and she is the reason I have this book in the first place. She introduced me to Leslie, my agent. She introduced me to everyone. And I took this course. She's still teaching it in Stanford. And I send everyone who's asking like how to write a cookbook. I send everyone there because this is the most helpful thing ever. You will learn how to write. You will learn all the steps. You will get some useful feedback. And hopefully you will connect to people that can help you create this cookbook. And I think this is very important to be able to ask people for advice, because it's such a different process from everything you know. So that's why you need to ask, because you will never figure out everything by yourself. It's so hard.
Was there a big surprise with all the things that you were learning? Was there something that you would have never thought you would spend all this time doing? Like Kristin and I joke sometimes about, when you write a recipe method, it's like, do you have to say in the pot over medium heat, add the butter? I mean, there's certain things that you don't know until you have to do it. And you're like, what is this? What is this method?
Absolutely,
that you have to learn.
That was very confusing for me because, first of all, I have this slight ADD. I cannot read the whole recipe like from start to finish. I had the hardest time doing that. Again, I'm very grateful for my copy editor, Sharon. She was like, okay, you need to explain this. And I'm like, yes, I will. I understand, because it was hard for me to imagine that there are different people who will cook from this book. They're not always pro cooks. And most of the time they're beginners. And I need to make sure everyone can cook from this book. So that was very confusing for me at first. But then I'm like, okay, I got it. I got it that I need to close my eyes and go through the whole thing. And if I can imagine the whole flow, then I can say, oh, the recipe is done.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. Did you go through a whole proposal process and everything?
Oh, of course, yes. And oh my God, I had a conversation like an hour ago with a guy who wants to write a cookbook. And he's not writing a proposal. I'm like, no, go back. You need to write a proposal just for yourself, because it is such a nice structure. It will give you the clear vision. You will know what you want to say, because it's always hard to pinpoint a lot of stuff. And first of all, you will know your competitive titles. You will choose your favorite recipe. You will have some structure. So proposal, I think it's very important. Even if you are going to self-publish, just very good to have this concise piece in one place.
So glad you're saying that, because I totally agree 100%. The one of the hardest books I ever did was one of those where the proposal was only a couple of pages, and then we had to figure it out while we were writing it, and it was not a good idea. So everyone out there, just do what Anna's telling you, write the whole proposal.
And then
it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
Show it to people, because everybody feels so protective about their work. I'm like, no, they will steal my idea. Oh my God, this is like every cookbook has been written. They need your voice, not your title idea. And ask for feedback, because you might think this is the best idea ever. And just listen to some people who already published a couple of books. Then if they will say this is the greatest idea ever, then you can proceed. But like, it's okay to rewrite it. It's okay to work on it and pivot. This is nothing bad. Just it's good to do it while you're not too far away in this process.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like it's either hard to do the proposal. It's always hard to do the book, but like it's just so much harder to do a book without that roadmap of a proposal. I think.
cannot imagine doing it without the proposal. I can't.
Yeah.
And that was all what you built in Tori's class at Stanford? You learned how to write was that your final project to write a proposal?
Yes, that was my final project. It was not, I think I had a very concise proposal. And then when I met my agent, Leslie Jonath, then I really learned how to write it because she sent me some samples. And I'm like, now I need to add this and make this. And so I think half of that was written during the class, half of it was written after I saw some other proposals and got the idea, because I'm a very visual person and I need to see the structure and I need to read it and see it. And then I will write a good one as well.
I think Leslie does like really nicely designed proposals too.
Oh, because of Debbie. Debbie is my one love. She's my designer for the cookbook, and she does Leslie's proposals, and they're so beautiful.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Because that's one of the questions sometimes we have on the podcast is, should you get your proposal designed? And it used to be that people would just have it in Microsoft Word, and that's what I was told. And then it seems that there's been a big shift to have it more designed now.
Honestly, it makes everything more attractive. And you want to see your recipes and photos in like nicely formatted, with like little details. It makes everything so much prettier. And I believe that good idea doesn't need any fuss, but if you can make it look nice, it will get you further.
Yeah.
Great point. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Well, so let's get into the book. Let's talk a little bit more about what's in the book. You know, some of what's in this book is about like keeping these dishes alive. So I noticed that there's so much fun things in here, but I love it that you have more than one borscht recipe. You have like one with sorrel, what's green. You have one that's vegetarian. Just tell me about some of like your maybe greatest Ukrainian hits.
I'm very proud of my grandma's duck recipe. And the reason why is because, first of all, this is one of my favorite dishes of all time. And every time we get together with my family, we have this dish on the table always, like no matter what, it's there. The roasted duck is there. Even though it might be not a duck season. And like my grandma, she always has her ducks. She grows them. But then
what is a duck season? What is duck season actually?
It's late summer. Because she slaughters them and they're like fresh, but she has the biggest freezer possible. And half of the freezer is dedicated to ducks, half is dedicated to dumplings and like all the frozen stuff she makes, and we made them together always. And she would just stuff them, and no matter the season, like winter, spring, whatever, she will have a duck ready for you. So this is one of the dishes people like very much, especially if they are from Eastern Europe. And I shared this recipe with, of course, recipe testers and some friends. And I got so much love from them for that recipe, because they said, oh my God, I made it for my daughter's birthday and the whole family loved it. And it's such a grand and beautiful dish. I'm very proud of it. And I'm very happy that people actually like it, because duck is not the meat that people eat every day. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad they enjoy it. I really like my vegetarian borscht, because vegetarian borscht is something not all of Ukrainians appreciate, just because we're so meat centered. The cuisine itself is like based on pork and like chicken, a lot of meat every day. And vegetarian borscht, even my husband, he's like, I don't know. And then when I achieved that rich, deep flavor, and he loved it, I'm like, yes, I made it.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
That's one of the dishes I really, really recommend people to try from the book.
What do you think the trick was to get that rich flavor?
Prunes and mushrooms.
Oh yeah,
prunes! Yay!
I love prunes, and I'm so sad that I cannot find the same prunes that we have in Ukraine, because in Ukraine they're very smoky and even deeper in flavor. Here they're soft and juicy, almost like they are soft.
Right.
Our prunes are drier and they have this very deep smoked aroma, and I wasn't able to find anything like this here. So Still searching.
Yeah, it seems like something that I saw in Armenia was more of this like dried plum, and it was maybe smoky because it was being dried maybe near fire or maybe out in the sun, but near a fire or something. So that sometimes like the dried fruit would have the smoky kind of flavor. But I do think like that part of the world has so much great dried fruit and things that you can't find here at all.
Yeah, sometimes my mom will bring something like prunes or honey. Oh, I love it. It's very illegal, and forgive me for breaking the law. But
we're just breaking all sorts of laws. Yeah, we will not report your mom.
Hopefully.
What makes the honey so special?
First of all, it's local. She brings it from our local farm, and it just tastes like childhood. And it's very fresh. But after like a couple of months, it crystallizes, and my mom always sees our local honey, which I have like for half a year, and it does not crystallize, and she's like, this is a bad honey, don't use it. Like they've done something to it. I'm like, okay. And
to stabilize it so it doesn't crystal.
Yes. Wow. And in Ukraine we appreciate crystallized honey because we know it's just pure, natural, and the flavor is very deep. Like I guarantee you will not be able to find the same flavor anywhere here, just because it tastes like local flowers and local trees and blooms. So it just tastes like home.
Yeah, I could see
How
that.
did you work with recipe testers?
Oh, it was a very scary part of the process. I thought, oh my God, I will not be able to manage all of those people. How can I find them? Then I just posted it on my Instagram. And in 2 days, I had 20 people signing up for recipe testing. And I created this Google Sheet and all sorts of spreadsheets for them. So I categorized the recipe. I said, okay, people, you can sign up and you can choose recipes, but we have one recipe will have up to 5 people testing it. And I had this Google Sheet questionnaire, and they filled like their background. And oh my God, I think I need to publish that at some point because I got so many fun answers. And I got the range from like professional recipe testers and chefs to complete newbies who just like my page and like my Instagram and wanted to participate. So I got all sorts of feedbacks, and it was very easy to manage because I just created all the process. And thanks to my husband, because he's in tech and he knows how to manage the process. And he said like, okay, do this, do that. And it was very smooth. Everything was digitalized. It was fun, actually. I think it was the best time I had working on the book, just chatting with people, reading their response, and they're like funny. Yeah. People sometimes they write funny stuff, so I love it. The thing is, first of all, I try to write recipe in that way that everybody can cook no matter where they located. Mm-hmm. So we will be able to get the ingredient. And people were biased because they came from my Instagram page and they follow me for a reason.
So you had people from the UK, you had people from the US and different parts of the US.
Yes.
You had people tracking down duck from different grocery stores around the world.
Yes. So great. It was a lot of fun. And the feedback, like I had some minor adjustments, but most of the recipes I already tested so many times that no adjustment were needed. And I wanted to clarify the steps. That was very important. Mm-hmm. Some people who are completely newbies, they're like, oh my God, I've never worked with yeasted dough. Can you explain this? And that was super helpful because I understood at that point that, okay, I need to expand my explanation. And I did step-by-step photos for some recipes that I thought will be challenging for people.
Oh, and that's so cool because we should talk about you photographing the cookbook. But when we work with a separate photographer and that photo shoot is set and then it's done, you can't say like, oh, can we go shoot this step-by-step photo? But you could totally do that, which is awesome.
Yeah. And God bless the tripod and remote control.
Yeah, tell us more about the photography. I mean, I'm looking at these photos, and number one, the styling is so great because you can clearly get that Ukrainian feel, but it's not in a cliched way, right? It feels very fresh, and the colors are so vibrant. So how the heck did you do all these photos? How many? There's a lot of photos in this book.
Well, we had more photos. We had to switch some recipes just because they didn't fit in the book. But yes, I was a food photographer before I was a food writer, so that helped a lot. So I worked with a lot of chefs and restaurants, and I knew how to use my camera, and I really, really love styling food. So this is something I could spend my whole day on, just tweaking. And over these 10 years I've been here, I collected a lot of props and a lot of linens, and I splurged a little bit before my photo shoot process for the cookbook. And I had some photos already taken before even the cookbook, just because I thought of that. I'm like, oh, this is a good dish. I need to photograph that and keep it for later. So I had some photos, but then when I started picking recipes for the book, I wrote every styling tip for each and every recipe I wanted to photograph. I'm like, okay, this is the linen I will use. This is the color I want to add. So it was very, because again, I'm a visual person, and when I write something and I see my writing and drawings, that helps a lot, because I cannot I have hard time memorizing stuff until I write it down.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a really good tip about, as you're working on the recipes, putting down what props, how you're visualizing this. Because, I mean, other people out there are going to want to photograph their own book. What are other tips that you would tell them? How would your average sort of day look like?
So first of all, I'm very grateful for our apartment. We moved right before the pandemic, and here we have the best natural light ever. And I only work with natural light. So any time of the day, I'm able to shoot. In my other apartment, it was not like that. We had, here we have windows from top to bottom.
Right.
Oh, the whole wall is one big window. So it helped a lot. So I did not have to adjust to the sunlight because I always was able to shoot. From my perspective, when you're cooking, styling, and shooting your own food, don't go more than 3 recipes a day, just because it's exhausting, first of all. Secondly, I once I did 5 recipes, and on my 5th recipe, I didn't care about the time. I just wanted to be done, and I was rushing.
Right.
I was so tired, and I'm like, why?
And you're doing all the dishes, right? You're not just, you have to do all the cooking and cleaning. Yeah, I mean, that's so much work.
Yes, but when you have, I recently was invited to participate, and I was fly on the wall most of the time, but I think I helped. My hand was in the picture. So my good friend, probably her, Viola, is writing the amazing Italian cookbook, and they did maybe 8 to 10 dishes a day, just because, first of all, she had help. She had a wonderful stylist with her who cooked and helped her style the photos. She had Molly, who took the most amazing pictures. She had a photographer, and she was there as well to help. And I was there to tell funny jokes. And when you have this team of 3 people, you can do this big shoots, but still it's a lot. But you do that just because you want to spend your money wisely, because everything costs money. You're renting props, you're renting some equipment maybe. So you need to pace yourself. But in my case, I was working alone. It was in the middle of pandemic, a lot of time. But then I went to cooking school, and that slowed down me a lot. And I decided, okay, I will shoot 2 days on weekends, because all the weekdays I was in cooking school, and I took a couple of photos after the cooking school. But by the time I was home, there was no light at all, even in my apartment. So I'm very glad that I did most of the photos before the cooking school, because I knew I'm going there, so I need to work.
So how did you learn food photography and food styling?
I took a lot of online classes.
Did you? Cool. Nice.
Yes. And I think it's very helpful. They have a bunch of very useful and very cheap food photography and food styling classes on Creative Life. So good. They are all timeless. I think the first class was there like 10 years ago, but I think it's still very much on point. And the tips they are giving, there is no expiration. They don't those.
That's interesting that you were already writing this book and then decided to go to cooking school. Because I'm thinking I could see myself overthinking all my recipes and thinking, oh, I need to change this method because I just learned this new thing in class. I need to change this recipe because I just learned this new thing in class. So how did cooking school affect the book?
I just wanted this support system, and I was so eager to learn more stuff than already know. I wanted to learn the technique and the method. It helped me to structure the recipe better, for sure, and explain everything better, because our instructor, Chef Kristin, she was so good about explaining everything. And she knows, like, most of us were just completely newbies. And she was explaining everything from the bottom to the top. And that very much helped me to learn how to explain everything to the reader. I don't know them. I don't know what they know. So I assume they know nothing about that, and I need to explain it. Helped a lot. And actually, it was not because of the cooking school, not because I was writing the cookbook. It was because I wanted to do something exciting after I finished. And it helped a lot because it expanded my horizon. Now I know where to look for like cool recipes. I know about like different research, and I'm just so grateful. They sparked so much interest in me. And I think I got a lot of different points of view through different cuisines and techniques we learned there.
It sounds like throughout your whole cookbook process, you've been building your community. You have your online presence, which has been amazing and it's been growing, but you also have had your in-person presence with the cooking school and the network of people you met through there, and your experience getting linked to the school, having Tori Ritchie as your teacher, getting linked to Leslie Jonath through her. I mean, it sounds like you've been really strategic in building this network, and the result has been this beautiful book. So it's been really interesting to see this evolution. I did want to talk to you about your writing voice, because you're writing in English. There's probably a lot of things. I wondered about like idioms. I think, there's certain like English idioms that just don't make sense if you translate them directly. And I bet there's a lot of Ukrainian idioms that if you translated it, it just wouldn't make sense. But were there certain things that you really wanted to put in the book and you thought, oh, but no one's going to understand what that means?
Oh, probably a lot, because we have this problem with my husband always, because I don't even try to translate anything. He is constantly trying to translate Ukrainian anecdotes or idioms. Here does not work at all. I gave up. I don't even try doing that. So
I think there's just so much fun you can have with language, but then you kind of are hamstrung of like, well, when I translate that, something about the meaning just doesn't quite.
I tried not to do that. I completely avoided that. And if it does not translate properly, I just give up immediately. And like with my husband, I learned that when he tells a joke like that is very funny in Ukrainian, he tells it here and nobody laughs. I'm like, you need to stop doing that.
You're like, trust me, it's funny in Ukrainian.
Yeah.
And tell me also about the decision to write recipe names in English and Cyrillic.
So part of the audience is people who are from Ukraine or have Ukrainian relatives or like grandparents, and they live here. And I wanted to write it for them so they know how to properly call it in Ukrainian. And that was also a very confusing part, because in Ukraine we speak Russian and Ukrainian, and I grew up speaking Russian. So for me, I had to double check everything, just because I mixed it up constantly, and it's very, very similar. So I wanted to write Ukrainian names, not Russian names. That was very like hard point. Even before the war, I wanted people to learn the Ukrainian names.
Well, it's interesting that I could see how challenging that is, because when I worked on the book Lavash, we had to use Eastern Armenian, not Western Armenian. And there's certain things that are just slightly different. But I had to, since I don't speak either and I can't read either, I had to get a native Eastern Armenian speaker to read all the titles for me. And there is one little error. I think there's the recipe for gata. I think we wrote it wrong. So everyone out there, you can see that we missed. We're sorry. We'll try to fix it in reprints.
I had the same thing. I had it with borscht. So the spelling we used in English is Russian spelling in English, not a Ukrainian spelling in English. And I already got
I bet.
Yeah. People are like, why are you doing that? You're embarrassing our culture. I'm like, okay, stop right there.
It's so hard to get all the details right. We all try, but there's always going to be that one little I wish.
It's okay. We're all human.
But I also wanted to know just some of your recipes really have this like cross-cultural, it's not cross-cultural world food, but it's really cross-cultural in the foods of Ukraine and neighboring countries. I mean, you spent some time in Georgia, it sounds like. You have that lovely lavash wrapped halibut.
Yeah, you inspired that recipe because we've been wrapping everything in lavash and putting it on a grill. And then I learned about your recipe and I'm like, oh my God, I need to make a lavash wrap in my book because it was such a part of our picnics. We don't have like barbecues, we have picnics. So it was such a big part of that. And I didn't even think about putting because I didn't think of it as Ukrainian. Yes, it's not Ukrainian, but we do it in Ukraine. Wow. So thank you.
So cool.
Yes, it was such a big inspiration.
Well, I love seeing that. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. I haven't actually tried it with halibut anyway. So I think I didn't know that that was something that happened in Ukraine. You would use lavash and put it on the grill for picnics.
Oh my God. My mom loves that. She also adds like mushrooms and grated cheese and sometimes ham. She wrap it, put it on a grill and you just slice it and it's just so good. And and sometimes even tomatoes as well. So it's like she can make it vegetarian. She can make it with meat, with fish. Yeah. Awesome.
I think this is one of those books where we were talking about this, Kate, like the pantry section is so important. You know, there are people who are like, do I do a pantry section? Do I not do a pantry section? But this one's just so beautifully done.
Thank you. I feel like it's very important to, when you write about different culture and the culture that is not as known as, let's say, Italian food, you need to explain some stuff and it's easier for people to know where you're coming from. And it's important to have some stuff in your pantry before you start cooking the recipe. Mm-hmm.
Did you ever use any of those old Soviet cookbooks for ideas or inspiration? Because I remember seeing those. I can't read them because they're probably in Russian, right? They're huge, they're thick, they're like the joy of cooking, but for Soviet food. And I think it was the way that the Soviet Union tried to get everyone to cook the same food. Did you ever look into any of those old sort of, what was it called? Taste of Home or whatever it was called? They were like these historic books. Yeah.
I have one. Oh my God, these books are so bad. So bad. You cannot cook from them because like the method is just not there. They will make your dough as usual. This is like, and the recipes are not tested. Like they're barely cookable. Is there a word cookable? I don't know, but they're horrible.
We're saying there is. So I was wondering, but they just assumed that people knew how to cook, so they didn't have to tell you how to make dough.
They have like a cake recipe this long. You cannot make cake recipe with the ingredients. You cannot make that. And it's just...
So a 2-inch long cake recipe. Yeah, that's a tough sell.
So no, I did not use that. Most of the time I was inspired by the food I ate as a kid, by the food my family makes, and actually by the stuff I cooked at my pop-ups, just because people love those recipes. And I wanted to write this book for the people who actually came to my dinners and kept coming to like all the new dinners, and they are my community and they are the biggest inspiration for me. And I wanted to write this book for them as well.
That's such a great story. So what's really great about this book is not only are you giving people that foundation in Ukrainian history and that wonderful sort of pantry section that kind of does, like Kristin was saying, ground you in the food, but you're also looking through this. And I think a lot of people who might not be exposed to Eastern European cooking, Ukrainian cooking, they don't know how much diversity there is. I mean, you have dishes with mussels, you have all these great breads, you have all these great vegetables. I mean, it's really vibrant food. So I think it's exciting for people who might be maybe a little tired of Italian food or French food. And I hope people don't come after me for saying that. I think this is pretty fun, you know?
Yeah, and because of the USSR, we got those amazing dishes from Georgia, and they became a part of our cuisine, like in our menus, because we know they are coming from Georgia, and we always acknowledge that. But we also cook them at home. So if I grew up eating something, and even if it's like plov, for example, it's an Uzbek dish, but that's my mom's favorite dish to impress her guests. So she always makes it. And I don't know how many times she made the plov when she came here. Even when Tori came for dinner, my mom made plov. So that was the dish I grew up eating. And I said in the head note that this is not a Ukrainian dish, but it's a part of our table, it's a part of our culinary history, because USSR was a part of our history as well. So we got a lot of different pieces of different countries.
That's really well said. And I think that's why this is such a fun collection of recipes, because you get that sense of place, and you also get such a variety. And now I need to go find a duck so I can make your grandmother's duck recipe. That sounds
like the first
tasty.
Cool weekend I'm making that.
This is a fall dish for me always because of the apples. And I highly recommend you to serve it with banosh, which is like polenta-like kasha. The recipe is in the book, and make some pickled tomatoes, please. It goes, just everything goes so well together. Like this creamy cornmeal kasha, this wonderful rich duck with apples and some pickles. And probably, if you are into vodka and stuff, a little bit of infused vodka, and the dinner is ready.
That sounds so good right now. And it's that perfect season. You get apples, but you're also still getting tomatoes.
Yeah.
Anna, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we let you go, do you have any parting words of advice for somebody who wants to write a cookbook celebrating their culture and country?
Oh my God. I would write a cookbook proposal. This is first, and then it might help you to find your voice in this whole process, because it's so important to write a book in your voice, because we have so many cookbooks. And what's important is the voice behind the book, and always ask for advice and find your community and find people who will help you, because it's a really hard process. Sometimes it's a lonely process. So knowing that you have some people behind you who are rooting for you and who are ready to help is incredibly important. This is it. I think if you will write a good proposal, you will reflect on it and think about what you want to say, how you want to say it, and then ask for help and ask for feedback, you will be all right.
That's such a great way you talked about voice. It's going to be your voice, even if you ask for help. You're going to find your voice, but when you're asking for help, it's not like you're replacing your voice with somebody else's. You just need that help to further home in on what you want to sound like and what your story is.
Absolutely.
So, Anna, where can people find you?
First of all, my Instagram, please, because I announce everything there. I practically live there right now because of the cookbook promotion and because of everything that's happening in Ukraine. Instagram was a big support system for me. So it's Anna Voloshyna Cooks, or you can go to my website, which is annavoloshyna.com. And most of the things you can find there. And you can find my cookbook, Budmo. If you're in San Francisco, please go to Omnivore Cookbook Store, and it's there. You can pre-order from them, and they are donating 20% from all of the pre-ordered books to support Ukrainian charity.
Amazing.
And my publisher, Rizzoli, donated 10% from our pre-orders to World Central Kitchen. And this is amazing as well. So you can find the book on rizzoli.com. If you're in different countries, orders through Amazon, because it was successful. I know that people ordered from Canada, Australia, United Kingdom, because right now Amazon is the only international platform you can use to pre-order my cookbook. But hopefully we'll get to some stores in Europe as well. Yeah, this is it. Thank you so much for having me here. It was such a joy, and I always wanted to meet you. And now I'm like, oh, Thank you, ladies.
No, this was such a joy. I mean, you have such an excitement around your culture and your food, and I'm just delighted we were able to talk with you a little bit about your first cookbook journey. I have a feeling it won't be your last.
Definitely not. I'm so ready. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Everything Cookbooks. You can find us on Instagram at Everything Cookbooks and join the email list on our website, everythingcookbooks.com. Thanks as always to our editor, Abby Cirquitella. If you have a minute, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, because this really does help more people find the show. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and thanks for joining. Until then, we'll catch you next time.